For our final unit in this course, we are going to be focusing on ecology. And we're going to start off with an introduction to ecology. That way we have a better idea of what it is and the main principles behind it. So just starting off with a basic understanding of ecology. So it's going to be the study of relationships either between two organisms or between an organism and its environment. So it becomes necessary that we have an understanding of what it means to be an organism, a living thing. And in order to be considered an organism, you have to meet all the characteristics of life. So let's talk about those characteristics of life. The first one is that you have to be composed of at least one cell if you're unicellular or more cells if you're multicellular. You have to contain either DNA or RNA as a genetic material. You have to be capable of growth to develop and become larger. You have to be capable of reproduction, which means you have to be able to produce offspring. And it doesn't matter if that reproduction is either sexual or asexual. Sexual meaning that you have two different parents producing genetically unique offspring together, or asexual, like one parent producing genetically identical offspring. This doesn't have to be the way that your mind may be thinking about it. A lot of times with asexual reproduction, we think about like a bacteria just splitting in half. But remember, mitosis, your body creating identical cells to the original, is asexual reproduction. With sexual reproduction, you have plants that undergo sexual reproduction, which is not typically what you think about. Whereas pollen is plant sperm, and that pollen will pollinate another plant. So you are creating genetically unique offspring of a plant. Also, a characteristic of life is that an organism has to demonstrate the ability to respond to outside stimuli. So just to clarify, a stimulus is a change in an organism's environment. It's going to be the cause of something, to whereas the response is the effect. So how an organism reacts to a change in its environment. So an example of this is a sunflower. Sunflowers tend to grow facing east, which is their response to the stimulus of the sunrise. So the sun rises in the east, therefore that is my stimulus. The response is that the plants tend to face the east, and they can actually kind of track the sun during the day, which is also a response to the sun being a stimulus. Some other examples of things. A stimulus could be a loud noise, and a response is you covering your ears, you jumping. Those are examples of that. Whereas if you scream at a rock, it's not going to do anything, right? Because it's not living, it's not having a response to a stimulus. Another characteristic of life is adaptation and evolution. So as a population, living things can adapt to their environment and evolve. So populations of living things change over time as individuals with better traits, remember adaptations, are going to live longer and reproduce more. And so, very important, remember, individual organisms cannot evolve, only populations evolve. And then also another characteristic of life is that organisms are going to have a metabolism. So when we think about metabolism, we think about burning calories, having a high metabolism, being able to eat whatever you want, lucky ducks you, and not gain any weight. However, metabolism is all of your chemical reactions that are going to help provide energy for your processes and create key molecules for your body. So even your ribosomes making proteins during transcription and translation, that's a part of your metabolism, even though it's not you necessarily breaking down your food like what you would normally think of as your metabolism. So this is a quick check. We've seen this a few times in this course, but it's important to kind of realize that we are on the organism level right now, so a singular moose, because that is something that is living. We have focused on the smaller levels, moving from an atom all the way up to an organism. So with ecology, we're going to be focusing on the other direction, going from organism to biosphere. So remember, an organism is an individual of a population. A population is a group of the same species. A community, you're going to add in multiple different species, so different populations of different species. With an ecosystem, you are adding in abiotic or non-living things to that community. Then a biome is multiple ecosystems across the planet that have very similar climates. And then your biosphere is the entire Earth and everything living on the Earth. So once again, organisms, individual members of a species or a population, like a single deer. A population, multiple organisms of the same species living together, so all of the deer in a specific field. A community, multiple populations of different species that are living together, so all of the deer, all of the birds, all of the plants, all the insects, all the squirrels, and everything else that is living in that field. An ecosystem is the community plus the abiotic factors in the environment. So all of the deer, birds, plants, insects, and squirrels in a field, and the temperature of the field, the precipitation in the field, the rocks, the soil, everything that is abiotic or non-living as well. Then you have the biome, so multiple ecosystems that share similar characteristics, but they are located on different parts of the planet. So like grasslands, tundra, desert, temperate deciduous forest. And then you have the biosphere, which is the zone of life on Earth. So it's encompassing all of Earth's biomes and all of Earth's ecosystems. So that leads us into biodiversity. So remember, bio means life. Diversity means having differences. So this is the variety of organisms considered at all levels from a population to an ecosystem. And whenever we are talking about these levels of organization, when we got down to the species level, we had some issues because we had inconsistencies with how people wanted to define what is a species. So from that idea evolved this branch of biology called taxonomy. So taxonomy is a field of biology that classifies organisms and it organizes them based on similar characteristics. So all life is organized into domains. There's 3 domains, and then it gets more specific as you move down. So domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. I would really recommend maybe coming up with a mnemonic device in order to remember the order of that. So did King Philip come over for great spaghetti? Or come up with something that makes more sense to you in order to remember that. With this taxonomy field came binomial nomenclature. So bi means 2, right? Nomial, nomen, those are all kind of words that mean name. So this was a 2-name naming system that Carolus Linnaeus came up with, and it gave a specific universal name to all species. And that comes with their genus name and their species name. So the 2 most specific levels of taxonomy are an organism's scientific name. So for example, it's got a dog here, and it actually has 3 names, Canis lupus familiaris. So that is because Canis is the genus of a dog, lupus is the species, which in this case is a gray wolf in this case. Familiaris is a subspecies, meaning domesticated dog here, because dogs can interbreed with gray wolves and still create viable offspring. They're technically not their own species yet. It's kind of interesting. But for example, polar bears are Ursus maritimus, and brown bears are Ursus arctos. So they both have the same genus, and that tells me that they're both bears. Ursus means bear. Hence the constellation, Ursus Major and Ursus Minor, by the way. Big bear and little bear. But anyway, they have different species names because they are different species. However, they are very closely related because they are in the same genus group. Another way that we help classify things are by using a cladogram. So these are diagrams that show relatedness of organisms. It does not show ancestral relationships like a phylogenetic tree. Okay, so these are different than a phylogenetic tree. I'm not trying to show common ancestors. I'm trying to show what they have in common. So the pink box on the left is an example of a cladogram, and I can look at this and I can see which organisms have more in common and what they have in common. So everything past the legs box has legs. Everything previous to the legs box does not have legs. So the very first branch off, that is the worm, does not have legs, right? And so that means it doesn't have wings and it doesn't have forewings. But as I move down, I can see that the last two organisms have legs, have wings, and specifically have forewings because their branches are after those specific characteristics. This same information can be organized into what's called a dichotomous key. So remember, di and bi both mean two. So this is a tool for identifying organisms based on the characteristics where you are presented with two choices, and based on your answer with those choices, you'll kind of narrow down what that organism is. So let's say that we wanted to identify this thing right here, okay? We start off at question 1. Does it have legs or no legs? Well, obviously it has legs here. So go to 2. So now I'm at 2. Does it have wings or no wings? Well, it's got some wings here. Go to 3. Does it have 4 wings or 2 wings? 1, 2. It has 2 wings. So it tells me that it's a fly. So that's how I work with dichotomous keys in order to figure out things. So in this case, this probably wasn't very difficult. Hopefully you knew all those organisms. But these are very helpful in identifying things. A lot of people have dichotomous keys to help like field guide mushrooms or plants or things that are very similar that maybe you don't have them memorized, like identifying different salamanders or things like that.